Scott Woolnough is an actor, singer, director, and father based in north central Pennsylvania. He currently serves as the artistic director for the Little Theatre of Wilkes-Barre, currently in its 98th consecutive season, and has 39 years of experience with theater at all levels, performing in professional and amateur productions across the U.S. and in 2 foreign countries. He played Huck Finn in a national tour of Tom Sawyer, and played Rosencrantz in an Off Broadway production of Hamlet. Currently enjoying theater strictly as a hobby, Scott is currently employed at Misericordia University in Dallas, PA, where he has worked as a disability services coordinator since 2009, having previously worked in the New York City Education System in the Bronx as a special education teacher and dean of discipline and security. Scott is also a proud veteran of the United States Navy, having served in both Operation Desert Storm 1990 and Operation Desert Freedom 2001 to 2003. He now lives in Wilkes-Barre with his amazing fiancée Jessica and spends a lot of time with his son Colin, 13, and his dog Namath, 10. He can be found on Instagram at Little Theatre WB, that's theater with an R-E, or via their website, ltwb.org. So how are you?
I'm good. I'm well. Things are, things are as well as they can be in this new environment.
Misericordia?
Close, Misericordia, yep.
Okay. Let me make a note of that so I don't get it wrong again. So you kind of forget the E in the ER?
I guess, yeah. I mean, it's Italian, so Misericordia. Yes.
Misericordia.
Misericordia.
Misericordia. So, you've done so much already, although, I guess we're of an age where we better have done something.
Yes, right.
So share with us, if you would, what your artistic vision at this juncture is, and how art in the various forms it's become a part of your life entered your life.
It entered my life as a hobby. It was something that I just enjoyed doing. The way I got started in theater, I was 10 years old, walking in the supermarket with my mother, and this director says, "Hey, does he do shows?" And of course, the answer is no. I've probably never even been to the theater at that point. And so he would be perfect in this production of Christmas Carol that I'm doing, Tiny Tim and blah, 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 blah. And I got in there and I loved it, got bit by the artistic bug right away. And it was just something that was always there. I ended up going to a performing arts high school. I ended up doing like local commercials. I was a local celebrity, and it was just something that was a part of me until it came time for high school to end. And I had a conversation with a guidance counselor. I was all ready to go to college and study theater and do that for a living. And my guidance counselor, I very distinctly remember him saying that people from my area, I grew up in a very rural town. I grew up in Madison, Alabama. And people from this area don't go to college. People from this area go to the military, and that's what you should do. Okay, sure, fine. And so I ended up going to the military, and even in the military, theater all of a sudden just, you notice on my resume there, on my theater after school resume, Yokosuka, Japan. That's where I was stationed, and I ended up doing community theater in Yokosuka. And so it's just one of those things that just kind of always permeated. And that's what once I got involved in theater in Japan, I said, okay, I need to do this now. This keeps finding me. So even though I was considering a career in the military, I got out and I went to Florida State University. And so that's where I started my theatrical education. And as most young, stupid actors do, I thought I knew better than my teachers. And I felt I was wasting my time at Florida State. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to do this anymore. And I moved to New York, and I just did it. I jumped into the deep end. And that's kind of how I've always lived my life. I jumped into the military without really, thinking about it. I jumped into New York City without really thinking about it. I jumped into the Board of Education without really thinking about it. That's how I've always kind of lived. But, and so when I got to New York, luckily I had a job. I was working at a bookstore in Tallahassee, Florida, by Florida State, and it was B. Dalton. B. Dalton is kind of defunct now, but B. Dalton was bought out by Barnes and Noble, and B. Dalton had a branch in New York City, and so I just transferred up. I nailed my very first audition, and that's when I went on tour with Tom Sawyer. And so here I'm thinking, I made the right decision, right? I nailed my first audition. I'm doing a national tour. This is cake. This is easy. And then I got back from the national tour and things weren't so easy. And, I kind of got involved in the party lifestyle a little bit. And that's when I decided, I guess I was 29 when I went back to college and said, I'm going to do this for real now. So, but as far as artistic vision is what you were saying, is I want to educate through theatrical pursuits. My main focus as artistic director of Little Theatre of Wilkes-Barre is to make sure that the art is not lost. What I see often is a lot of companies, particularly community theaters, they put on shows, but there's very little teaching being done. And, the respect for the craft being done. Even, I love what KISS does. KISS is a local children's theater here in Wilkes-Barre. And I love what they do, but they're still all about the show. And while they do some theatrical education, a lot of it's lost. A lot of it's just about the show. And in today's climate, shows are so expensive to produce. For community theater companies. And there is such little capital there. And I understand why all these theater companies, they need to put on the show because that's where they get their money from, And so I get it, I understand, but that's not where my focus is. My focus is when I'm directing and I see a young actor, I make sure they understand the craft of creating a role and and that's kind of where my goal is now, is making sure that all those values that have been passed on to me throughout the years are now being passed on to the next generation. I didn't move around. I stayed in the same basic geographical area, but I went to 13 different schools in 12 years. And so I was constantly having to make friends. I was constantly having to just introduce myself to people. And that created my personality as much as anything else. And being able to interact with all those different personalities, and especially in the military, when you're just kind of thrown in from these people that are from all over the place, and you're working side by side with them, and you're living for them, and you're dying for them. It's different, and being able to pull from those experiences as well helps you as an actor or director.
So, yeah, what's interesting is that you're not the first person I've known who has been both an artist and former in the military. And it's interesting, as someone who was brought up by hippies, those were two worlds that I didn't think were connected. And then as I became, I moved to San Diego, I spent 13 years in California, and San Diego is a big military town. Every branch.
I spent 6 months in San Diego.
Oh, great. Yeah. Share if you would, how the military became part of your life. I know you said you just jumped in, but how did that actually go? How did that happen?
It came from that guidance counselor, because I just thought that was what I was supposed to do. When you are, growing up in rural Alabama, where not a lot of your peers are going to college, it's just one of those things that I said, okay, that's not going to work for me. So I need to find out what is. And honestly, if I think back, the thought process was, I'm not sure what I want to do right now. I'm told that I can't go to college, so I don't know anything else to do. So I might as well go to the military to figure it out. Now, it was 1989 when I made that decision. We were at peace. The Cold War was winding down. It was, it was kind of a time of prosperity. So I said, oh, you know what? I'm going to join the Navy, because at least that way I can see the world. I'm just going to travel the world, and I'm going to see all these different other places, and, I'll just bide my time. And if I like it, I'll stay. And if I don't like it, I'll leave. And then shortly thereafter, 1990, all of a sudden Iraq invades Kuwait, and that's a whole different ballgame in the military. I was still very much entrenched in the military way of thinking. We went in there and kicked their ass in what it was, I forget what it was, 42 days or whatever it was, and we scored the touchdown, and that's, high-fiving each other, and that was great. But it wasn't until later, in 2001, Operation Desert Freedom, where I spent 3 consecutive summers in the Iraq theater, whether it be Bahrain, Kuwait, or Iraq, when I realized, okay, we didn't score the touchdown. This wasn't over. And that's when I decided I was getting out of completely. Before, even when I was acting in New York, I was still in the reserves, and so I was still, doing my 1 weekend a month and my, 2 weeks in the summer and what have you. And so I was doing that entire time. If I was involved in a show, I could waive it. And they didn't, because I'd already done my military service, my actual active duty. And so I didn't have to go. I just wanted to go. But it wasn't until after 9/11 and I started, really starting to see what was not going on over there. Much more importantly, what was going on over there, what was not happening. And I said, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. I can't be part of this machine. And that's when I got out.
Because you had this vision throughout your life, this artistic vision, and this, I think, curious explorer vision, right?
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
Yeah. So there's a kind of like similarly between the two of us, like a real thirst for experience and a love for what life can provide. You're fulfilling your artistic dreams by running a theater and being involved in shows when you can and helping educate, and you're really enjoying that. Plus you're taking care of disabled people. Holy crap. And then all of a sudden our current world happens where the world gets turned off. So your creativity is being stifled, and possibly what's happening for many of us is it's actually reemerging in the places where it can reemerge. What is happening? What's happening to you as a creative spirit during this quarantine?
It's interesting that, you kind of prepared me for that question, and I was thinking about that. And if you ask me that question today, I'm going to give you an answer today. But if you ask me this question 2 weeks from now, it would be a completely different answer. And the reason for that is because of the nature of my job. A lot of these students with intellectual or cognitive difficulties who are in college, it is my job to assist them in their college pursuits, in that way. And now they have been thrust into this online environment. A lot of individuals with autism do not deal well with change, do not deal well with things that they're not prepared for. And God bless, this is the epitome of that. And so what my job has become is to find those artistic, creative ways to make sure they are staying active in their education and not shutting down. And so all of my energy these days is going toward them. And because I'm having meetings like this, like you and I are having now, where we used to be in the same room face to face, where I used to be able to sit next to them and help them, figure things out. And now I can't do that. And we're very, very isolated from each other. And it's not the way my job is supposed to work. And so I need to find those, I'm using that creative outlet to help them and make sure that they're staying on point. Now they graduate, or they finish for the semester tomorrow. And so all of a sudden on Monday, I'm going to have all these creative juices flowing and nowhere to put it, because they're done. And so it's going to be what I'm looking forward to is seeing where that takes me on my little personal journey, because I have been 100% focused on them to the point where I'm mentally exhausted at the end of the day. I don't even recognize quarantines happening because I'm online with them from 8 to 5, and then I go to sleep. So then that's going to change next week. And then I am done for the semester June 1st. And so we'll see what happens then when I have all day to figure things out. There's a novel brewing. And so it has been brewing for years, actually. And so it's in there. I just need to get it on, regurgitated onto a page. And so that's what I'm looking forward to, is having that kind of time, and hopefully the kind of drive that's coming with what I'm putting into work right now. And if I can just refocus that onto a page, I should be okay.
What is the potential novel going to be about?
It's funny enough, about a one man's journey. He finds out that things where he is are not what he thought they were. And so he just decides to go for a walk. And that walk takes him to his childhood home, which is, again, just thinking this out loud, we're talking, walking basically the Appalachian Trail. And so just that journey that takes him there. No money, no food. What happens when you're invested in a society where material things matter, and all of a sudden you thrust yourself into a world where they don't, and what kind of people you meet along that way.
You and I met when you were already an integral part of the theater scene in your area when we were rehearsing for Assassins. So first of all, the auditions, Adam had already been working with us at a different theater company in a different area on 1776. He couldn't wait to be in that show again. I think he's done it 3 times now, but he had developed a sphere of very talented friends. And so when he said he was going to be directing a show, and not only a show, but Assassins, which he was one of the people that in my novice turned me on to it, it was a no-brainer. We all knew we were going to be going out there to audition. And so you walk into the audition room, you've got much longer hair, much longer facial hair. And I remember going like, who is this guy? And like, no judgments, just, yep, this is not your average bird, and I'm not your average bird. So I certainly I could appreciate that. And then you started acting and I was like, yep, I'm all in. Like, I cannot wait to work with this guy. But then there was a rehearsal before performances where we took a seat on, I think it probably was like an old minivan back seat was sitting in the hallway, and we sat on that or something like that. And I think you may have just come out and sat next to me and just started talking or something, but I don't recall exactly. But I remember sharing that you knew I'd started to pick up some professional gigs. And I think it was like a commercial here, a film there, or something like that. And so you shared with me about having been in the union and having been on tour and making a living at it, but then, and feel free to tell me what we can and can't talk about, but that a custody battle all of a sudden changed your life course, where your options were either follow your dream that you're loving, or give that up to move to rural Pennsylvania so that you can still maintain a relationship with your son. And so you were envious of my position of doing what you were once doing. And I was envious of your position in a way, because I'm a Peter Pan who I'm an uncle. That's as far as that's ever going to go. And I really, really envy the, I see pictures of you with Jessica and with your son, and it's just so clear how in love you are with your family.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you could share with me what your thoughts are on whether I'm accurate about recalling our conversation and the truth of that.
You are probably accurate in the way I may have expressed it. The reality is my theater dreams at that point were pretty much dead. I decided that in 2003 that this acting thing, I'm going to treat it like a hobby again. I did not enjoy being a professional actor. Because because I love the craft, I love theater, I love acting, but when I go and audition and I don't get it, okay, fine. When I'm a professional actor and I go to an audition and I don't get it, I wonder where my next meal's coming from. I wonder if I can make rent. And I did not like that aspect of the business. I would love to be a professional actor that doesn't have to worry about that. Then I would be okay. If I was, on Broadway with a recurring gig, and I was going from show to show to show to show, and I had a solid resume and I had a solid foundation to work from, I would be okay with being a professional actor in that environment. But where I was struggling, working, that old adage of, oh, you're an actor in New York, what restaurant do you work at? Tony's DiNapoli on 43rd. That's, I didn't like that aspect of it. And so when I went and got my teaching degree, and I was chosen as one of the New York City teaching fellows right out of college, and that was 2003, I said, that's it, I'm done. And so what I gave up to come to Wilkes-Barre to follow my son was New York City lifestyle. Because at that point, I was making very, very good money in the Board of Education system. Teachers get paid very, very well. Dean of Discipline and Security gets paid very, very well. And so I was doing okay at that point. And I was enjoying New York, and I was enjoying my friends in New York. I met my wife, my now ex-wife, and we had Colin, and she decided that she wanted to live close to her parents, who live in Wilkes-Barre. And so I said that I had to make a decision at that point. Do I stay in New York and have this remote relationship with my son, mirroring the relationship I had with my own father? My father was from New York, Long Island, actually. And, you know, my mom went to live next to her parents in Alabama after the divorce. And so I said, that was the relationship I had. And I know the relationship with my father was harmed because of that. I said, I'm not going to be my dad. I'm not going to do that. And so wherever my son goes, that's where I go. And so now I'm here.
If you could, like, how would you describe Scott before and after fatherhood?
Oh, you were talking about Peter Pan. You know, that's who I was. Yeah, I was, and I still am to a certain extent. It's nice that I do not have to do a lot of the things that a full-time parent has to do. I mean, I you know, she still has custody of my son. I get him, once a weekday, and I get him every other weekend. And so when he comes over, it's playtime. You know, it's I get to be the cool dad. You know, and so I don't ever. I still discipline, and we still talk about those serious topics. But for the most part, I get to still be Peter Pan. You know, we still go out and we play, Nerf guns, and we still, I throw them around the pool, and I do all the fun things dads get to do. And very rarely do I have to be the bad guy. And so that is wonderful. I don't mind playing the bad guy. I have to, if I have to play the bad guy, I do. But it's one of those things I don't have to do, and that's what's nice. But the Scott even before marriage was a lot more carefree, I was told when I was in Japan, I went to see a soothsayer, and I was told that I was going to be very successful in my chosen career, but I was going to die before I turned 30. Okay. But so once I turned 31, 32, I figured, okay, now I'm on borrowed time, because my entire 20s were spent with the idea I wasn't going to live much longer. And so, I probably did a lot of things. Even in high school, I did a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have lived through. But once I became a parent, now if I were to do something stupid and kill myself, out of stupidity, this is affecting other people now. This is affecting someone else. This is affecting someone who needs me when they're 20 and trying to figure the world out. Someone who needs me now. And so you definitely start living your life a little more closer to the vest. Look at the choices I've made. I never would have chosen to live in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. That never was on my radar of things I wanted to do. Look at, things we've already talked about, how I love to travel. I love to go to all these different foreign countries and meet all these people. Well, I've been here for 10 years now, and so I'm meeting my circle, and I'm still doing as much fun stuff with them as I can, but I would love to expand my circle. But you know what? That's not what's good for Colin. What Colin needs is me to be here. What I need is to be here for Colin. And so those decisions where, 12, 13, or, Colin's 13 now, 14 years ago, I wouldn't have thought anything about just picking up and going. Look what I did. I had a lucrative job in New York City, and I just picked up and left. During the, one of the biggest housing crises, this country has seen 13 years ago, with the housing market, the bubble had burst. And so I came to Wilkes-Barre without a job. I had no place to live. That was just what it was, and I just came here and figured it out.
So how did you figure that out? How did you go? Yeah.
I started putting my resume out there. My first thing, I wanted to stay in education. So I started putting my resume out to the public schools in the area, becoming a high school teacher. And even though I had a master's degree and taught in the New York City public education system, and in Pennsylvania, you only need a bachelor's degree to teach, they still wanted me to take 3 extra courses that were not on my transcript that they required teachers to take, even though I had already had a master's and 7 years experience. And they said, nope, you have to take this class, this class, this class. Well, I said, well, that's not going to work. So let me just see what the local colleges are doing. And lo and behold, there was a tutorial coordinator position opened at Misericordia. And so I applied for the tutorial coordinator position, and I went in there and I did that for a year. And I was hired because I was previously teaching in the Bronx. And they hired me as tutorial coordinator and ESL specialist. Now, I spoke a little bit of Spanish, but not a lot of Spanish. I wasn't sure how much of that you heard. But, and so I spoke a little bit of Spanish. No, that's okay. I spoke a little bit of Spanish, but not a lot of Spanish. But here I am now filling this, ESL specialist role at Misericordia. They still had not fleshed that completely out. They still didn't, they didn't have a complete handle on it. But I did that for 1 year. And then somebody from where my position now lies in disability services, they left and said that they're going to move you over there to disability services. And that's where I've been for the past 9 years. But I mean, it was one of those things where, call me lucky. Maybe you make your own luck. Maybe I'm charmed. I don't know. But I've, things like that just kind of fall into my lap. And now that I put that out in the universe is going to take it away. But, I for some reason, I constantly jump into the deep end, and there's always been water in the pool. One of these days I'm going to do it, and there's not going to be, but I'll deal with that day when it comes.
Share with me the experience you had with the touring of Tom Sawyer, and then what it was like to do Hamlet in New York.
The way I fell into, I'll do Tom Sawyer first. Tom Sawyer was so much fun. And in the beginning, you spend 10 months cooped up in a tour bus with the same people, tensions are going to get riled. But in the beginning, we had a great time. And we were like a band. I mean, we were really, really tight. All we saw was each other. And so all we hung out with each other. And plus we were doing the right thing. We were inviting these schools in to see live theater. And it was just, that was a wonderful experience that I would have not traded for any of the world. I was well suited to it because I'd been living out of a suitcase anyway, because I had just gotten out of the Navy, and so I was used to that kind of on the go lifestyle, and I saw the entire country. I mean, we did all the touristy stuff and went to all the cities across the South and the Southeast and up, we never got to the Northeast. We didn't get up to like Seattle, Montana, Idaho, but I mean, I've been pretty much everywhere else in the United States. And so that was really, really cool. Hamlet, I kind of fell into. It was a complete accident. When I was a senior in college, I'd gotten all, I was a political science major. And I had nothing but electives to take my senior year. And so I said, you know what? I was very adamant when I chose my major not to choose anything theatrical. I wanted to get away from theatrical education completely. But I said, you know what? I'm going to go talk to the theater department and see if I can get into an advanced acting class based on my resume. And so I did. And she was, Dr. Bosch was like adamant about not letting me get in at all. She was like, there's no way. You have to take beginning acting before you can take the acting, etc. But then I mentioned that I had been in the military. We were just talking like you and I are talking, kind of. And she just happened to be doing a production of Wojciech at the university. And she wanted somebody with military experience to play the sergeant. And so she said, I tell you what, I'll let you in the advanced acting class if you play my sergeant and teach them the drill, teach them how to march, teach them a military bearing, etc. And I said, okay, no problem. Anything to get my foot in the door, right? But apparently I must have made an impression on Dr. Bosch because she was directing an off-Broadway play that summer, Hamlet, Heart of My Mystery. Now, what that did was, it was a play that was written around Hamlet, and it was the story of Hamlet, and the dialogue, most of the dialogue was there, but then people break in and talk about what's happening in the scene scholarly, they're quoting scholars and scholarly works around the scene. So the scene would freeze and this guy comes out and says this, and then the scene would continue. And I got to play Rosencrantz, plus a lot of all the different scholars that came out in that production. And so that was a complete accident. I was not intending, I mean, it's irony to me that after I decided I didn't want to be an actor anymore, that's when I got my Off Broadway gig. And so it was interesting.
Yeah. Well, you probably, you took the pressure off yourself, which made you more comfortable and better at what you were doing.
You're probably very right. Yep.
How long was your tour, and how long was the Hamlet production?
The tour was 10 months. The Hamlet production ran a month and a half on Theater Row on 42nd.
Nice.
I also did other productions. I was a long-term actor with Once Upon a Time, which that takes some children's theater to very, very, very rich people's houses.
Right.
And so that was lucrative. Then I considered myself a working actor doing that nonsense. And I also worked with the Grove Theater down at the Grove Street, the Grove Street Players, and that's in the West Village.
Oh, okay.
And so I had a long-standing gig. I was actually their technical director for a while. And then I was taking a class at the HB Studios, and I met a woman by the name of Susan Shumsky, and a person who loved theater and had more money than she knew what to do with. And we got together and created Without a Net Theater. And we started producing our own shows in New York. And so she was acting as artistic director, and I was acting as technical director, and we produced a number of shows. John Monteith, who was a very famous improvisation artist back in the 70s. We got with him, and we produced his one-man show. We produced Terrence McNally's Lips Together, Teeth Apart, and just shows like that. And once I decided I didn't want anything else to do with the business, I just kind of walked away and left her, with it. And so I don't know what she did with it after I left, if anything. But that's what I consider the pinnacle of my New York career, is when I was actually producing.
You enjoyed producing as much as or more than acting?
Well, no. Now I would definitely say acting, because all the pressure's off. Again, when I was doing theater in New York, and again, it was a different mindset. I was a young actor. I did not have the experience that I have now. I was living very much hand to mouth, and my credit score was nothing, and so I didn't have any kind of safety net at all. And so it was literally, if, I had the mentality that if I do not get this Broadway show, it just means that I'm going to be working at the restaurant. And a friend of mine, fellow actor, said, okay, you have to go to the parties, you have to network, because very few people really get roles from auditioning. They get roles because they know people. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense to me. So I started going to the parties, but then I forgot to audition. And I was so wrapped up in the idea of, oh, hey, I'm an out-of-work actor. I'm an out-of-work actor. And you know why you're an out-of-work actor? Because you're not actually trying to act. You're not trying to work. And that's what I kind of got wrapped up in. And that's also, that's my heavy drinking days and all that self-destructive behavior wrapped in there. And finally, there was a woman I met when I was 29 that changed my life, turned my life around. She was in AA, and she said, look, if we're going to be together, I actually met her when I was doing work at the Grove Theater, when I was doing the technical work at the Grove Theater down West Village. And she did a lot of shows there. And so we kind of hit it off and started talking. Much older woman than me. She was 17 years my senior. But we just connected. And she said, look, I'm in AA, and if we're going to be together, you have to not drink. And I was like, okay, done. And I quit drinking that day. Wow. And well, I mean, I wouldn't say quit drinking. I didn't drink when I was with her, but now I can social drink and not worry about it. But that's why she always joked that I was never an alcoholic. If I could just quit like that, then I was not an alcoholic. Okay. Even though I stayed drunk for pretty much 2.5 years. But all that self-destructive behavior when I was trying to act, I really think short-circuited my potential career. It definitely short-circuited my potential, period. And there's a part of me that says, once Colin is grown, once Colin is off living his life and he doesn't need me anymore, maybe I'll go back. You know, I know a lot better now. My credit's better now. You know, it depends on what Jess wants to do. But she makes noises that she wants to go back, you know, or go, you know, she loves New York. And so she loves that lifestyle. So, you know, who knows what might happen, but there's definitely a piece of me that says, this is not done. This is not over with yet.
And the upside, if there is one, to getting older is, as an actor, the older you get, the smaller your pool gets. There's less of you doing that. So, you know, there's some of the reasons that I've gotten many of the roles I have, I think, is because I'm a 40-something-year-old white guy. So there's a lot of roles written for me in theater and commercials and TV. Mm-hmm. If I were a young blonde 19-year-old ingenue, I'm going to be battling every single person I see for that same role. So, you know, when you're 60 years old, you wander back into New York, perhaps with Jessica, like with your talents, there's a pretty good chance that you could make something happen.
It's kind of you to say. One
of the other ways I seem to identify with you is that you seem to be an old soul with a kid's heart.
Yep, that's a very accurate description. Yeah.
So no wonder you're so revered in your area. Aside from your talents, you're just a great guy, dude.
You're kind. Thank you, sir. And you too.
Scott, I really, really appreciate that you did this. I
had a blast talking about this. It's one of my favorite subjects.
Good. You are an amazing person. I thank you so much. And we'll chat again at some point here soon.
Absolutely, Isaac. You too, sir. Thank you so much for including me in this. This is awesome.